Alright, so hello everybody. Today we're going to be cooking up some French onion soup, some chicken farro, some French toast, and more good things on top of that. So we're going to start with the French onion soup because it takes forever. It's what makes it taste really good, and move on from there. Start with lots of onions. This is about 4 pounds. Hi, model. Gonna use a mandolin because I'm lazy. If you don't, you can cut these by hand. It just takes time. This is supposed to be a rustic soup, so you don't necessarily need them to be all the same. It just helps. So, pretty straightforward. Gonna take all 8 onions, gonna peel them all, gonna slice them all into the pot, add some butter, set them to cook. In this case, your mandolin comes with a little widget so that you don't stab your fingers. Use the widget so you don't stab your fingers. When you do this for real, you can use any type of onion you want. I'm using sweet onions because I like it. Red onions make a really cool looking soup. I just use red wine instead of red onions. As you can see, a mandolin makes this way easier. Now this is the actual hardest step of the recipe for making French onion soup. Everything else is really easy. No, I have sweet onions. As you can tell, I'm not crying, and I am rather sensitive to onions. The sweet onions on the whole, provided you've actually bought them fresh, don't make you cry. I highly recommend going to an actual farm stand and finding them. I'm going to use the 5-second rule on that one. And if any of you guys ever want to do it, you can actually cook along with me. You can see the link to the Discord at the bottom of the screen, and then further down is a clickable version. My goal is every Friday night I have every recipe posted. You can totally meal prep at the same time I am. I can totally post the recipes on Hungry's Discord. I haven't, only because I don't want to like spam the whole thing full of food. There's lots of really good chefs there, but I can definitely do that. Okay, last onion. Okay. The hardest step of French onion soup is done. As you can see, there's just a few onions in the bowl here. At this point, add some butter, put it on really low heat, and go. I'm going to follow the Julia Child school, which is a lot of butter. Well, you know, I need to save some for later. Basically, the concept with this is you're going to get it up to temperature and then keep it really low, covered, And then every 10 to 15 minutes you want to stir it. And if there's no more water left, onions give out a lot of water. I've got a Malbec in the fridge. Pull out a quarter cup of it, toss it in there, put a quarter cup in the chef. You know, the normal things you do. Actually, last week I made coffee butter for French toast. It was a lot of fun. Alright. And while that's slowly going, it's me going basically the whole rest of the show. I'm going to start making up the bacon for breakfast sandwiches. They're going to go, the eggs from the breakfast sandwiches are going to go in the oven. Bacon's going to be cooked on top. You cool it all down. And then once they're all cold, you assemble the sandwiches for later consumption. So I've got this farmer's market bacon, which is really awesome. I'm going to cook all of it. I happen to know that the size of an English muffin is about the same width as half a piece of bacon. So cut it in half. So you can see these are some pretty nice looking slices. Same basic concept as the onions. Low and slow is your friend. Dude, fat slices are great. You can get them so they're crispy and chewy at the same time. A real thin cut bacon, you've got to make a choice, and I don't like making a choice when I can have both. The eggs themselves go in the oven, 400. I have 5 of these little fruit tart dishes because they're 5 days in the week. Basically, a couple drops of oil in each one, an egg, and then 2 good seasonings. They're both from Trader Joe's. One's called umami seasoning. It's basically mushrooms and red pepper flakes. And the other one is everything bagel seasoning. I have not. I've watched more than a couple historical shows and historical, like the Townsends doing their heritage cooking, but I have not seen that. I do what I want with my onions. Besides, I can't put fat in the dishes for the eggs until I have fat from the bacon, because what other fat would I use? I will, and I'll play around with them the whole 2 hours while it's happening, too. Also, I have to ask, do you drink your bacon blendered or like just the fat? So what you're saying is you whole thing in blender? Okay, good. That's like keto life right there, just continuous bacon. So I really like vegetarian cooking, so long as it's not like I'm gonna put textured vegetable protein in to pretend that I'm eating sausage. There's lots of really good vegetarian food that isn't like doing its best to pretend there's meat. Uh, a number of years ago, my grandfather told me that, if in his 80s they could clean out his heart valves, well, why would he change what he's eating if they can just do that again later? Now, again, because I'm meal prepping and not eating right away, even the bacon, I'm going to not quite get as crispy as you would normally do to serve right away. You're assuming your final step is going to take a little more moisture out, so you want to always do just like a pinch under what you would normally do. The best part, we're finally getting colder weather here, which is why I'm making French onion soup, is finally having weather that I can, make soup with and not turn around and have it be 95 degrees the next day. A couple weeks ago, we had this really fake fall where it was like 50 degrees for 2 days and then immediately 95. I'm going to use beef stock. I thought about chicken, but I like beef better. Also, that lets me use red wine. It is not homemade. I guess it's not homemade. I thought about doing homemade, but again, I ran out of time. And the farmer's market this week, unfortunately, did not have any. Normally, the guy who I buy my bacon from has homemade bone broths and stocks, and that lets me cheat. Yeah, I guess I could do 2 days. Do like Saturday for the stock, and then Sunday. Oh, that's right, steam. Uh, for the actual soup. But even then, yeah, it takes a long time. In here. This is cooked off enough fat. I guess you could use like butter or oil if you really wanted, but why waste good tasting fat for fat that has like zero flavor instead? The pastry brush would be the fancy way to do this. The finger is the I don't want to do dishes way to do this. And then 1 egg in each dish. First of all, these are silicone. Also, with my bad luck, if I decide to crack a knot into the bowl, I'm going to end up with a pile of shell everywhere. Again, these are from the farmer's market, so the shells are kind of, some are really thick and some really aren't. I could. But then I just end up with yet another surface I need to wash. Because the one time I do it, I'm going to end up with a really thin eggshell, and that's going to be the end of that. Much like McDonald's, top the yolk so it flattens. Otherwise, if you don't pop the yolk, it doesn't cook evenly, and then it doesn't taste very good. Pinch of each. This is a brand new jar. We'll see how this pours. Not very well. Dude, it's friggin' amazing. If you haven't tried the mushroom one, I would definitely do that as well. It's really good. It's like they were made for eggs. These go in the oven 8 minutes. No more, no less. So I almost never make fresh bread. I have always found that I can go to a baker who can make much better bread than I can, and I would much rather spend my time instead of fiddling with bread that I don't like the results on to cook things I do like the results on, like French toast with the bread. But one of these days I'll make real bread. I've lost all the timers in the building. I don't know if you can see it, but they're nicely steaming now. Yeah, when I get a place that has an oven that I actually trust the temperature on, I might be more interested. On the whole, I try not to bake anything that's super precise on temperature or time, because my oven likes to go from minus 25 to plus 50 and back down again. Doesn't work very well for like bread, cupcakes, as I found out. I burn brownies when I can make them in another oven. But I just rent the place, so what can you do? Bacon looks almost done. So actually, that's why I knew it was bouncing back and forth, because I'd set it to the same 400, and the one time I'll set it, it'll be like 375, and the next time I'll set it, and I'll look in there, and it's 450. Part of it's having a gas oven, which by definition is less temperature precise. The other problem is that I think this was the absolute bottom of the barrel gas oven that they bought off the back of a truck in some shady hood. All right, pull these guys out. Hot. Let's see, that one's done. Yeah, let's see, 30 seconds. And when these all come out, I'm going to save all this fat, because making French toast needs fat in the pan to fry the bread. Again, why would I use flavorless bread when I can use flavorless fat when I can use flavorful fat instead? Okay. Good. Yeah. Soft. Now again, I'm going to put these into the fridge, because when you're assembling the breakfast sandwich, you want all the ingredients cold. Otherwise the cheese will melt, and then you'll re-solidify it in the fridge, and then you'll remelt it again, and it kind of tastes like garbage at that point. take the fat out. Put this dish and this fat to the side here. I'll wait the 2 minutes for the eggs to come out of the oven before I start the other dish, so I'm not trying to do too many things at once. Have a good day, hopefully, and if not, maybe I'll see you next week. Alright, now, I think the camera's decent enough. You can see the piles of steam rising. They're starting to get a little less rigid, and the volume's going down, which is great. Obviously, it's a waiting game. I'm not really a patient person, but French onion soup, you've got to be patient. But there's the timer for that. These guys should be ready. 10 more seconds. Basically, if you're thinking in diner terms, you want the eggs to be like over medium, because then when you reheat them in the microwave, when you eat it that day, they become over hard or full fried. So you can kind of see a couple of these have a little bit of a jiggle, but their other ones are completely firm, and that's about what we want. By the way, hot things are hot. I know news at 11. Give these all a couple minutes, and then we'll put these right in the fridge. Cool this fan down enough that I don't melt anything in this sink. Yeah, I've burned myself a lot of times because I'm like, oh, I can touch this. It's only kind of hot. Kind of hot almost always means really hot, which is not cool. So I guess now is about time to get started on the third dish. The third dish is going to be another one that we have some prep work steps, put it together, then it's going to simmer for about 45 minutes. So again, one of the big things in meal prep is you get a bunch of stuff that you start from the longest to the shortest time, and that way you're not losing your mind. Oh, did you see what I did there? I'm glad, because I was going there. Move these guys out of my way. If you're following along on your scratch pad at home, we're on to the chicken and mushroom with Farro. So basically what we're going to do, and we're going to take some chicken thighs, I'm going to give them some salt and pepper, take them back out again, just brown them very quickly. Fry up an onion and some celery and then some mushrooms. Once those are fried up, add chicken broth and Farro. Nestle the chicken thighs back in, put them on the back on simmer, and let them relax for like 40 minutes until they're all fully cooked. So actually, I'm going to start with the salt and pepper. Now, if you're watching a cooking show, salt and pepper always is like fresh ground and fresh cracked. what they don't show you behind the scenes is they've got people like cleaning up after them. So, you know, grab raw meat, touch all these implements. Oh, wait, now someone who's me, in this case, has to clean them. Unlike in a professional kitchen where it's just some grunt who gets stuck doing it. So, I'll mix the salt and pepper in a little bowl here and then sprinkle out of that. So normally when I'm cooking this and eating this, I consider one chicken thigh to be like part of one meal. So I'm going to use 5. 4 for lunches and then 1 because I'm going to eat it right after this stream ends. Yeah, it's a little tiny cast iron dish. I think it's supposed to be for like something way fancier than I'm going to cook. These are boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Three, 4, 5. Nice little pieces. And the rest of that will go in sauce later. Again, we're browning these, so we're going to start with pretty high heat. For the fat, I'm just going to use some of this bacon fat. I have it, otherwise you could use butter or, you know, your choice of oil. Basically just a little salt and pepper on these. Do them in batches. I don't want to crowd the pan. That just makes them boil and not fry. And really the goal here is to get a good brown crust on it. And that flavor will carry through to the rest of the dish. So be generous. You want this to be really hot. Because I'm using bacon fat, you can actually see just there's a little tiny bit of water, and I'm waiting for that to finish going away. That means that the pan's bottom is over 200 degrees, which is great. Again, patience is a virtue. I don't possess any. Again, the onions are really cooking down. This is getting hot. Salt and pepper side down. That nice sizzle, that's what you want. I'm going to do these 3 and 2. trying to be good and not touch them. I want them to actually get nice and brown. Okay, well these are a little cooler. I can get them out of my way. Flip these. Again, these aren't cooked through when I'm pulling these off. They're just going to be nicely brown on the outside. And we're going to let them cook with the stock and the farro to cook all the way through. No, one more minute. And then obviously once these are done, I'm just going to flip and put the other two in. A little more fat. This one's sticking. Okay, same thing, salt side down. Well, I'm cooking up a bunch of stuff, so I'm doing pretty good. Nothing has yet caught on fire. then I can move that. Now in the next step, after this chicken is done, I'm going to pull it out and throw in an onion, or in my case an onion and a half. Let that fry for a couple minutes, add about a cup of celery, and then some mushrooms. So while that's cooking, I can dice the onion and get it ready. On the whole, with the onion, you want it kind of small. The dish isn't, unlike the French onion soup, the dish isn't about onion, so you just want the onion flavor, not like pieces of onion in your face. Okay. Turn that down just a little bit for the onion. Quick do up this little guy too. Okay, some celery. I want a cup, which is like 1, 2, this many. The joy of cooking is that you can measure things as precisely or as imprecisely as you want. This isn't baking. I have no chemical reactions going on. Nothing I need to worry about. Take off the bottoms. I don't like the way they taste. Give or take, this is a cup. It's probably a little more than a cup. Now it might be hard to see, but also just the moisture from the onion and the celery is getting the funge, the brown pieces, off the bottom of the pan, which is good. Those taste good. I want them in my dish. Now these are softened, I can stir. As you can see, the pan, which was full, is already only like a third full, which is good. It's got a ways to go. And then while these are softening up, I'm going to cut up some mushrooms, put them in, and then I'm going to add a little bit of garlic as well. I think I wrote down 8 ounces of mushrooms, but when I went to the store, they were 2 packages for $1, and you know I couldn't not get 2. I mean, they were 80 cents otherwise. So I'm going to be putting some extra mushrooms in. Quickly wash these. Alright, people like to say that if you put mushrooms underwater, they absorb like a ton of moisture. There was actually a study that was done. When you soak mushrooms in water like that just to wash them, they absorb about 1/16 of a teaspoon of water, or less than asparagus. So whenever someone tells you you need like dry paper towels, blah blah blah, they're lying. again, I'm just kind of cutting these up so that they're bite-sized. If you get really new mushrooms, you can leave the ends on. They're kind of old, the ends get hard, and they don't soften up very easily, so just chop them off. So on the whole, mushrooms give off a ton of liquid, which is why I'm leaving the lid off right now. I don't want to turn it into a soup. So in the green stock pot, I have French onion soup. In the frying pan in front of me, it's currently onion, celery, and mushrooms. It's going to be a dish with chicken and farro. The chicken is right here. The farro is like way out there. And there's already breakfast sandwiches cooling in the fridge. They are done. Now for this, like, these are baby bella mushrooms. You could use whites or like a miyatake if you had it. You want them to start to soften, so you'll see how the outside was very white, this color, and it's going to start turning that darker, like, grayish brown mushroom color that you see. And that's when we're saying they're starting to really cook. They'll also get softer. let's cut up a couple cloves of garlic and throw them in there as well, because everyone loves garlic. It's not a real clove. Two. Let's go 4. Model, the breakfast sandwiches are like a 10-minute thing. They're super easy to make. And once you start making them, you're never going back to like Dunkin' Donuts or Wawa or whoever to get them. These I'm just kind of slicing, chopping, making them smaller. So, you know what bagels are, right, Kitty? Something like that, yeah. You make them, in this case, they're filled with like eggs and bacon. Almost always, to call it a breakfast sandwich, you're using eggs in it. No, bacon and egg filled English muffins. Or bagels, not dogs. Although the dogs at work, all of them would like to be stuffed with bacon and eggs. So, I mean, they won't correct you on that. Yes, bagel, not beagles. Beagles are something different. Yes, English is hard. I will 100% agree English is hard. Not only are bagels and beagles both desirable, beagles also want bagels. Or at least every beagle I ever knew wants bagels. This is half. No, that's a 1. Now I'm about ready to add the farro, the chicken broth, and then the chicken back in. So I'm going to add my spices at this point. Rosemary and oregano, about a half teaspoon of each. And don't have to be really exact with this. Rosemary is important. It's very flavorful. You won't miss it. I would say more than the oregano, although both of them are, you'll notice. This is some type of fancy rosemary. It's from Spain, so I'm sure it makes it like extra fancy. It smells really good, so we'll go with that. So poof from the side, I've got the Farro. This is a cup and a half of Farro. I actually went to the bulk store and bought it, and they had a set of measuring cups I could borrow, so I bought exactly a cup and a half. It's great. TwitchBot thought it was a bad word. I had to find it and say, okay, you're allowed to do this. So basically, I'm going to add the Farro. I'm going to measure out 3 cups of chicken stock. I'm going to add it. Stir it up. And then nestle that chicken in there. Push it to the back burner on low and let it sit for 40 minutes until the water's all the liquid has absorbed. And just like the beef stock, I'm cheating. I did not make this from scratch. If you have more or less Farro, you're looking for 2 to 1. 2 parts chicken broth to 1 part Farro. Okay, take these pieces before the broth gets really hot and burns my fingers. And then whatever juice came out of the chicken, it goes in too. I want to get this back up to a simmer. Then I'm going to push it back and I'm going to pull that other frying pan forward and we're going to make French toast. My kitchen smells really good. It's also getting really hot. I have to say I'm looking forward to the middle of winter when I can just cook all of this food and leave the window open and not have to care. Right now it's completely open, and even then it's not helping. But we are almost up to the simmer. Yeah, I saw the weather forecast. I got so excited because I could make soup. It was like 45 last night. It was amazing. Uncover that just a little more. So last week I made French toast, and I made what I thought was enough for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so that I could do a couple more complicated meal preps. Yeah, I ate the entire loaf last week. So I gotta make more. And to top it off, the bakery I went to last week and got the brioche was out of brioche when I went there. So I'm using a different bakery's brioche, all of like 3 blocks away. So we'll see how that works. It's a little physically smaller bread. But basically, just like last week, equal parts eggnog and eggs. Poor Deimos, locking him in the bathroom. So I'm going to start out with the last couple eggs out of my fancy eggs. Eggnog is like, it's a dish you make, it's a drink you make, and it's like eggs and milk and cream and sugar, and it's really bad for you in every way possible, which means it tastes really, really good. Last of my other dozen of eggs. Kitty, to give you an idea, like a half cup, so 120 mils of this is 200 calories. It's like incredibly bad for you. I'm gonna need more than 5. I mean, I always want ice cream, like in everything, ever. Bottle, I'm literally cooking like an entire week's worth of food right now, like all of it. You think you're hungry? Kitty, if you manage to eat this all in 5 minutes, I would be honestly impressed. Let's see, I want what to stir this with. So just by the end of this, I'm adding almost 2 quarts of liquid to that French onion soup. If you could drink that all in 5 minutes without like immediately vomiting it all back up, I'd be very impressed. Okay, so turn the heat on here. So you can see there's already a lot of fat in the pan from when I made the bacon. Look, if you come visit me, you can eat food. I will make you food. But you have to come visit me. Once this actually gets hot, pretty much this first couple pieces always don't go quite as well as I'd like. Oh, there they are. Oh, model. So before I start every week, I write out like every implement I'm gonna need and what's getting used for which cooking object. And within the first 20 minutes, I use the wrong spatula or spoon for something. So then I have to wash it halfway through. It's hot. Oops. I might have to do these one piece at a time. The back pan is too large and it's pushing the front pan off the edge. So when you're looking at the onions, a little bit of this is just depends on the onion. When the water evaporates out of the dish, you're going to add red wine to deglaze it over and over again. In these cases, these onions have a lot of water in them, so I'm not doing it as fast because there's more water to get out of the onion. Depending on whose recipe you follow, sometimes you don't add red wine at all. They're what I like to call teetotalers. And wrong. Now when you're cooking the French toast, you want to also do it just a little tiny bit under what you would if you were serving it on the plate, like for immediate consumption. Because remember, when you reheat this, you're reheating it in the toaster, and that's going to suck a little more liquid out. Teetotalers. The peoples who don't drink any alcohol. You know, Mormons. And this is basically just going to be rinse and repeat. I am just going to do one piece at a time. The pan's too far forward, I can't cook on it, cook on the front edge. And I think it's hard to see, but actually, model, if you, on this pan, it's actually steaming the whole time, which is getting rid of that liquid so I can put wine in it, and some wine in me, and in it. Speaking of wine, let me pull out the corkscrew. Want to be prepared here. Turn that down just a little. And for the next 30 minutes, I can't actually close this hand because I'm going to just continuously put raw egg all over it, so I don't want to like touch anything with it. Oh well. Now, if you don't have brioche, you could use like a challah bread or something of that nature. Your sweet breads work really well. I don't really enjoy a sourdough French toast. And then like last week, I'm not making any more coffee butter. I think I said earlier, it didn't turn out amazing. So that can stay on the, looked really cool in a food magazine, not so much in real life pile. Almost. Now, like most cooking, we're really in the patience game part of it, and it's the patience time. After we're done all the French toast, I'm going to make it just disappear here. But really what I'm doing with it is I'm going to put it on a bunch of cookie sheets, and then I'm going to slide them in the freezer. Once they've frozen solid separately, then I'll put them back in the bag the bread came in. If you do that, it's much easier to pull them apart when you want to eat them later. If you just throw them back in as a stack like this, they freeze into one giant chunk of French toast, which, while it might be good, might be a little much for you at once. Now again, these are just a little lighter than like if I was eating this. I'd probably let them go just a little longer. Another piece. Getting closer. It's a little harder to see, but there's actually a little bit of brown now forming. The onions are not as white. They're starting to turn that darker color, which is great. That's what we're looking for. If I followed like a third of the recipes on the internet, I'd stop right now, but those recipes are all wrong. Okay. I think we're done about half the loaf, maybe a little more. starting to get in a crucial time for the onions. And actually, I think when I get to the last 2 pieces, I'm going to cook them up and eat them right now because I want some food. Getting hungry. Get the bottle of wine out. Don't really need it yet, but I'm gonna open it anyway so that I can, put some in the chef. You know, I think I'm supposed to let that like breathe or something. I'm not really a professional wine connoisseur. I just drink it. Um, I no, I don't. But I am gonna pull out a glass and drink some wine. You know, wine for the chef, wine for the dish, but mostly for the chef. Okay, next piece. Now, again, being patient is important. Um, the, the onions have been on for almost 2 hours at this point. They've really cooked down, and now that's when the flavor really concentrates in them. And in the end, I know that my coworkers at work will be very jealous of what I'm cooking right now, and they'll be really angry because I didn't bring enough for them. And that's what makes it all worth it. Alright, that's cooking along. Alright. Now this is the last one I'm going to do like I'm prepping it. The next two are the last two pieces, and I'm going to cook them like I'm eating them right now because I'm going to eat them right now. And if you're keeping track, I've got about between 10 and 15 minutes left on this, and as much time as I want on the French onion soup. Take these out to the cooling racks. Oh, fresh plate. Hopefully red wine goes with French toast. I don't know, I'm not... So this guy, the last piece, I'm going to eat these two while I am deglazing that because it is starting to nicely brown. And I'm gonna, from that point on, I'm going to have the lid off on the onions because that way with the wine and everything else I can kind of add it a little faster by getting more evaporation. Hi, thank you. You know. Alright, that one's really close. Now, compared to last week's bread, this bread's a little more dense. So I had to cook it a little lower and a little slower. If you get a really lightweight bread, you don't need to cook it very long at all because it won't absorb a lot of moisture. If you get a really dense bread, it starts out with a lot of moisture, which means you have to cook it longer. Okay. That's done. Lid off. Got a lot of beautiful fondue that browning on the bottom of the pan here. Fun thing when you're boiling stuff and sauteing like this, you can actually have a situation where it's browning on the bottom because all the steam is keeping the rest of the water off the bottom of the pan. So even though there was water on the top, there's no water on the bottom, which is why when you stir it up, it deglazes the pan. So I'm going to actually add a little bit of red wine. And I'm doing this just so I don't add too much at once. You want to deglaze the pan. You don't want it to like make your entire house smell like you're an alcoholic at once. There we go. And my only talking point here is if you're going to use chicken stock in the end, you want to use white wine. If you're going to use beef stock like I am, you can use red wine. I think it tastes better, so I'm using beef stock and red wine. But otherwise, the red wine will be too dark, and the beef, it'll look kind of funky with the beef stock, with chicken stock. Whereas, you know, beef stock's already really darkly colored, so, you know, that you don't see it. Put this guy back in just for a couple seconds. Get out some maple syrup, like real maple syrup, not fake maple syrup. Okay. And this pan is also done. Okay. Now, when a lot of people make French toast, you add cinnamon and vanilla. Eggnog also has cinnamon and vanilla, so you get those flavors without having to do any work. Move the chicken and farro back to the front burner. Wash my spatula again. Not burn myself. It's been about 35 minutes. The liquid is almost all gone. So I'm going to give this another 5 to 10. Conveniently enough time to eat the rest of my French toast. Finish off the French. After I finish off the chicken and farro, then I'll finish off the French onion soup at the very end. Again, it's one of those things, the more time you have, the better it tastes. That's why when you make it at home, half the time the recipes say to rush. You rush, it tastes okay, but not like you do in the restaurant. As I said, wine for the chef, wine for the dish. And now's when it's starting to smell really, really good. The onions take a long time to really caramelize and start that smell, but it's just amazing once it starts happening. Basically, my apartment at this point smells like French onion soup. And you know, for starting, I don't know, half an inch from to an inch from the top of that pan, there's maybe an inch worth of onions down the bottom of the pan. So the timer's almost up on the chicken and farro. I'm going to actually pull out the last couple things to finish it off with. These are things that you should do like right before serving, not do it and then put it away in a container like that. So I went to Trader Joe's, picked up a nice chunk of Parmesan cheese. I think technically this is Parmesan style. It's not from the right part of Italy. But I mean, it tastes the same. I just didn't have to spend $30 a pound on it. Basically, Parmesan microplaner on top of chicken as much as you want, or as little as you want, right before serving. Let the heat from the dish melt the Parmesan cheese. Alright, that's really brown. Basically, the reason we're deglazing the pan so many times is every time you're adding the ability for more browning and more fondue to appear, and that's a lot of really good flavor. So by giving it 3 or 4 or 5 times to do it, you get a lot more flavor than just one and done. Myself a fork. Find a little of this farro. It's really hot. Okay. It's right about done. What you're looking for in farro when it's all the way cooked through, it's got a texture similar to barley at that point. Um, so let me clear some space. Guess I could get rid of this. I'm done cutting. Get a couple of these out. This is done. Yeah, actually, there's a little too much liquid in here. Let me let that simmer off. Okay. Alright guys, and if you're trying to figure out if your chicken's done and you take a plastic spatula and it goes straight through the middle of the chicken, it's done. No more questions. Okay, what's your additional questions, model? I got you. Well, more wine. I'm hoping the question is, should I drink wine? Because that answer is yes. Well, just think, this week on Friday night when I post up all the recipes, you could look at them and go, I want to cook this. And then you can build a whole list of questions and you can ask them all to me next week. And I will do my best to answer every one of them. Alright, I'm going to start getting ready to put some stock in here. Basically, once you've decided you've spent enough time deglazing the pan, your onions are really dark. In this case, they're both a red from the wine, but they're really starting to turn brown. No, it's not the eggnog. Eggnog's back in the fridge. I'm out of rum, or I would probably start drinking the eggnog. I would make a fantastically bad pirate with how many times I'm out of rum. but it doesn't taste as good without rum. I'm going to give that just a minute. Supposedly that's to cook the alcohol out of it. Realistically, it's just to get it a little less liquidy. Okay, that's done. The chicken is very done. Make sure nothing's sticking. Because otherwise it's a mess to clean up later. And I'll use the spatula today. Your goal is one chicken thigh and a bunch of the side in each. Couple. Put lids on these guys. Figure out where I put my other containers. Again. Chicken. Okay, there's 3 put away. We have a plate for now. If there was any question on what I was having for dinner tonight, this is what I'm having for dinner tonight. And everywhere I read online suggested like a tablespoon. I'm thinking like a dozen tablespoons of cheese, because I am confident there is no such thing as too much cheese. Okay. While that cheese slowly melts over the dish, start pouring in some of the beef stock. All in all, I'm adding 2 quarts. However, after this first quart, I'm going to add the bay leaves. I think that because I grabbed 3, I'm putting in 3. If you didn't grab 3 and you only grabbed 1, then you should add 1. Let nature help figure out what you need to add. Just remember how much you added, so that way you remove the same number. In terms of stock, I actually added a stock that doesn't have any sugar in it. Or sorry, sugar, yeah, salt. So that way I can control the amount of salt in the dish. This is where you want to really start tasting it, making sure it tastes right. And remember, you can always add salt. It's a lot harder to take it back out. Grab a spoon. Need salt. Figure. Needs this much salt. I'm going to let this get all the way to simmering. Then put the lid back on it. Give me another 10 minutes or so with it. And then see how we're doing. If it tastes good, then we're good. If I think it needs a little more of something or another, then we add it. But really, this is the final steps. In terms of serving the French onion soup, I've actually bought, and I'll grab it, a little piece of baguette. Right before serving, what I'll do is I'll slice this about a 1/2 inch thick. I'll toss it under the broiler or the toaster, get it warm and toasted, and then I have some Swiss Gruyere cheese that I'm going to put on top of it, and then put on there because I don't have a fancy oven at work with which to cook this. I want to keep this off to the side in good shape so that way it's good for work this week. Put the Parmesan away. What's really going to be fun at work is explaining to them why I have a microplaner at my desk the entire week. When the chicken is really well cooked like this, it's not like you need a real knife. Basically shreds with your fork. put the lid back on so it gets up to simmer faster. I'm going to keep eating my 4 o'clock dinner. I guess now is as good a time as any. As I've said the last couple weeks, if you happen to look up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and there's a little heart that says follow and it's empty and you like what I'm doing, click the follow button. That way you kind of see when I'm online and you can see when I'm cooking more food. Outside of that, I will be on Sundays at 2 o'clock every week because there's one amazing thing about food. Once you've eaten it, you need to make more. Outside of that, this is just a little bit of a waiting game. Let me put these away. Can I put these Where's my, there it is. Things I manage to lose in my tiny kitchen all the time. Pot holders and garlic. I don't understand how I lose either of them. Okay. Do just a little bit of cleanup. Sadly, my sister isn't visiting shortly, so I'll be forced to drink the whole bottle of wine myself. Alright, let's... Is that bubbling yet? Almost. As I'm hoping you can see, it's really got that color of classic French onion soup. Oh. I think I'm going to make a little bit of soup. I'm going to have it with my chicken and farro tonight. So again, similar concept. Basically, this is a Swiss cheese. It's like knockoff Gruyere, because Gruyere is one of those region protected words, which means that it costs a lot. It's kind of like Parmesan is a region protected word, which means it costs a lot. Little cutting board here. Where did my knife go? Couple nice slices. You want something thick enough that it'll absorb the liquid, because otherwise, you're eating French onion soup. What else do you want to do? In this case, I'm going to have to throw them under the broiler, because my little toaster will eat these pieces and then never spit them back out. It'll suck. Let's see. There it is. Since I'm up to large and larger pans, we're going to put a little tin foil on here so I don't have to wash it. If you had those nice crocks, you could use those. I don't have space for them either, so I won't use them. But outside of that, that is what we're looking for. So I set the timer on the broiler for 3 minutes, so don't forget about it. Got my Swiss cheese. That's bubbling very nicely. I know you can't smell this, but it smells really, really good. Grab a spoon, taste test. A pinch more salt. Again, as with a lot of dishes, I'd much rather add salt than try and figure out a way to dilute it away. Give it those 3 minutes. Once the bread is toasted, I'm going to put some cheese on it, stick it back under the broiler. Then I'll ladle some soup in the bowl, and then we will be done for today. Alright. Yep, bread is crusted. Microplane go. So then first one. Second one. Third one. Okay. Back under for another minute. And then as this finishes up, get some soup in the bowl. Soups. Cheese a few more seconds to melt. Okay. Almost. Okay, I think they should be good. Yeah. They're hot. Put just a little more cheese over all of this because I can. Okay. And that would be that. So hopefully you guys all had fun watching. Again, as I said before, the recipes are all, if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a link. If you look are on the website and you scroll down, there should be a link that you can click on so you have to type things. Outside of that, I will be back here again next week at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern, whatever time that is for you, because I will be once again out of food and have to cook more. Happy cooking.